Hey guys, so welcome back to your next webinar, and today we're going to cover a short kind of 8 to 10 minute video on understanding macronutrients. Just a smidge more. I'm not going to go into any particular crazy detail over any specific macronutrient, however I will focus more on protein. What we're going to do is we're going to gain a broader understanding of all 4 macronutrients, specifically the 3 main ones that I want you to worry about. So when I say 4 types of macronutrients, macronutrients are basically where we get the bulk of our dietary intake of food and nutrients from. So you've got micronutrients, things like your vitamins and minerals, things that are on a much more minute scale and measured in that way. And we've got our macronutrients, which is how we can break up pretty much the entirety of nutrition. And they fall into 4 categories: protein, carbohydrates, fats and alcohol. We're going to kind of just scratch off alcohol as a macronutrient for the most part, because for want of a better term of calling them empty calories, what alcohol really is it's 7 calories per gram, but within those grams we're not really getting any of these other things. So it's calories that aren't providing much else, but obviously they provide potentially greater enjoyment and things like that of social occasions. But we're going to acknowledge it is one of the 4 macronutrients, and we're going to leave it there. The other 3, protein, carbs and fats. Now the key thing to remember when you're tracking, as you guys are at the moment, is how each macronutrient breaks down into gram and calories per gram. So protein and carbohydrates are 4 calories per gram of that macronutrient, and fats are 9 calories per gram. Now, what I don't want you to do is immediately vilify fats, because they're more than double the calories per gram of everything else. It's absolutely fine to have fats in your diet. Fats are absolutely essential in your diet, and I recommend that most diets should be comprised of at least 20% fats. We just need to make sure that we're accounting for the fact that as well as being nutrient dense, they are calorie dense. Okay, so we've got protein at 4 calories per gram, carbs at 4 calories per gram, and fats at 9 calories per gram. We're going to go straight in to protein, the one that I get you to focus on the most after calories that we're sticking to. And we're not going to go through kind of BMR and why we're on certain calories that we're on. We're literally just going to be going through macronutrients today. So protein, it is the building blocks of life, okay? And not just muscles, not just muscles, skin, hair, nails, teeth, bones, energy, organ function. The list, literally, I could be right over here. Okay, so it's essential for recovery from our training. It's essential to be repairing those muscles that we're breaking down in order to rebuild and shape them as we go. But it's essential for everyday life, really. It is filled with 13 essential amino acids if it's a complete protein. Okay, so I'm just going to dip over to that bit first. You've got complete and incomplete proteins. Pretty much animal products versus non-animal products. Animal products such as meat, fish and dairy will comprise of 13 essential amino acids that we ourselves cannot create within our body, hence why it is an essential macronutrient, okay? And incomplete proteins from non-animal based product sources, so we're talking like legumes, pulses, grains, nuts, seeds, tofu, like animal but kind of based swaps and things like that. They, for the most part, are classed as incomplete. Now it is quite easy to match, for example, a certain bean with another bean. This isn't going to be the right example off the top of my head, but a butter bean with a kidney bean. The essential amino acids that both of them have might be 6 and then might be 7, and then together their profile creates complete proteins, which is where people that don't tend to eat a lot of meat maybe just have like a predominantly plant-based diet, whether they class themselves plant-based or vegan and things like that. You just have to think about pairings of nuts and things like that to make sure that you're getting the full profile of amino acids, specifically leucine, which is going to help with recovery through training. Okay, now protein wise also helps with satiety, so that feeling fuller for longer feeling, especially when we're looking at potentially going on a calorie deficit. We want to be thinking about protein being as high as possible. For all of you, I'm pushing at the very least 1 gram per kilogram of body weight, if not more. And I'll constantly over the next few weeks, I'm going to be trying to push these things up even more so that we're maximizing our effects here, keeping ourselves fuller for longer, and also making most of the thermic effects of food. Protein has the highest thermic effect. By that, I mean breaking down the food sources that the protein comes from uses up at least 30% of the calories that's been brought in by it in order to break it down into these acids and get them going around the bloodstream. So we spend quite a bit of energy just processing the protein in the first place. So it's quite handy that way as well. Protein wise, one key thing that I always want to get you to think about, and I've said it a couple of times to you guys individually, is think about having an obvious protein source with every single meal. So we're going through protein synthesis spikes throughout the day, looking to increase and spike the amount of protein going around our bloodstream, and then it will drop naturally and we can spike it up again, meaning we're absorbing as much protein as we can from each meal and optimizing recovery as best as possible. Pretty much think about having protein at breakfast, lunch, dinner, and maybe a snack. That's protein, super important. And other than the calories that you're tracking, the only one that I really want you to be sticking to or going above and beyond. Fats and carbs. You'll notice I've already said to, again, most of you individually, don't necessarily focus on the number that I've given you on your sheets and things like that. The number that I might have given you, if I've given you a target to track for tracking your calories, is to generate a number of calories, okay? Fats and carbs is completely person dependent. Remembering that fats are slightly more nutrient dense, but if you are all over and you love avocados, nuts, seeds, eggs, things like that, but when it comes to pasta, you're a bit like, I could take it or leave it, well, guess what? Chances are you're going to have a slightly higher fat diet than carb diet. That's fine. It's absolutely fine. If, like me, you're a carb monster, you love pasta, but you can take or leave a handful of nuts, it will just swap round. So long as you understand that the total calories per day and averaging across weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks consistently is what's key as to whether you're going to drop body fat, stay as you are, or look to build muscle. This number can interchange depending on supporting your training and personal favourites, for want of a better term. So there's 4 versions of fats. Fats, again, are essential. They are essential macronutrient because of the omega-3s and 6s that, again, we can find in specifically polyunsaturated fats to help us reduce inflammation, balance hormone levels, and create hormones within the body. But also the omega-6s give us that balance by increasing inflammation and getting things moving that way. So, saturated, a little bit more natural, things like coconut oils and butters. Monounsaturated, and this is just how many saccharides are attached to each fat molecule. So, and it just builds as you go. So monounsaturated, your things like your oils, your avocados, they then kind of branch over again a little bit into polyunsaturated, salmons, fish, certain fish, eggs, nuts, seeds. Again, some will sit into omega-3s as inflammation reducing foods, and some will sit in 6s where it just spikes that process, and we're looking for that balance. Trans fats. Trans fats are basically fats that are produced via process after the hydronation of foods. So when we're talking bad fats, quote unquote, I really don't want to use that word, this is where we're thinking about process, thinking about the kind of fats that never used to exist before we started processing foods. Okay, they're the kind of fats here that, where possible, we want to have minimal of in our diet. And that's fats. 9 calories per gram, essential because of the omega-3s and 6s within them, just like protein, which was essential for its amino acids. Energy, massive energy, longer lasting energy from fats, and okay to have in your diet, completely okay. Carbs, funnily enough, carbs are the only macronutrient that has no essential ability. However, I would question that a little bit based on the fact that the carbs are the only energy source that feeds the brain. So you have a certain amount of carbs, 500 grams off the top of my head, that is stored in the liver, which is only accessible for the brain. So if you've ever gone really low carb, or you've done a hard workout, like a really hard workout, for example, the day I did my spinning course, we did 8 hours on a spin bike, and I just had breakfast, asked for my phone number at the end of the course. I was absolutely hanging because we'd gone through assessment after assessment, and I couldn't remember my phone number because I just tapped into every single carb store that I had available, including raiding my liver, because my body was saying, right, we don't need to be doing anything here with the brain, we just need to be moving these legs. Sent everything to the legs, had nothing left in the brain. Low carb diets, people will often report fogginess, foggy-headedness. That's where that angle comes from. Energy, generally quicker releasing, but you've got obviously carbs we want to think of as a scale, and that scale you can Google and research the glycemic index, and that's the amount of sugar that will go into the bloodstream as a result of the type of carb consumed. And you've got everything from having a bit of Haribo on a run, which we'll have all more than likely heard of, to your sweet potatoes, your porridge oats and things like that. And everything sits somewhere on that scale, quicker releasing carbohydrate to a slower, more longer releasing carbohydrate. The one thing to remember with carbs, and this is where they get vilified, is storing one part of carb within your muscle as glycogen, ready to act, ready to perform, ready to train. When we store that gram, we're also storing water with it, because glycogen has to be stored within water, which is where you get that water weight flush if you just disappear carbs out your diet. Water weight drops off and you get that kind of that feeling of instant success that can come with a low carb diet, but you then can come unstuck once you reintroduce carbs, or it's that misunderstanding that we're dropping body fat when actually we're just dropping water weight that was held within the muscles as we were holding carbs within those muscles. So carbs are not to be vilified for holding water with them. It's just understanding if you have a slightly higher carb meal and you stand on the scales the next morning, chances are they might be up a bit. That's not body fat. That is going to be the water stored with the higher carb day or meal that you might have had. But carbs, energy, energy, energy. And as I said, I'm just going to go back to this as a circle. These two are interchangeable depending on personal preference, interchangeable depending on the foods that you enjoy. Just understanding that you can fit a few more carbs for your calories in your diet than you can your fats, based off of the science and the numbers and the maths, okay? But if you're the kind of person that enjoys grains and things like that, chances are you're more than likely going to be 30-ish% here, 30 to 40, let's say, and then you're going to jump in again here for that 30 to 40, and here's going to be more like 20 to 25/30, depending on the mix up of things. That would then just swap depending on preference. This tries to stay the same, because protein is what's going to help us recover. Protein is what's going to help us keep ourselves fuller for longer. We can get our energy from where we particularly enjoy to get energy from, understanding that going too low on either of these isn't going to be ideal for health, and ultimately health is what's important.